Do you want extra money for bills, trips, extracurricular activities for your kids, or do you want to replace your entire income? Monat is the answer. Our products are Leaping Bunny certified, vegan, and Monat can be used by anyone, including your kids and pets. Message me on my Instagram to partner with me. Founder shares are available, and as a market partner, you have access to uncapped bonuses, 45% commission, 35 to 55% off discounts, on top of all-inclusive paid trips. Right now, I also have a free gift for anyone that partners with me, so don't miss out. You can message me on my Instagram at LizChilvers80.
We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today.
Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It is Supermac and Gibbo. Gibbo is having a few technical issues, so he will be with us in due course. But it's good evening.
Yeah, nothing to do with his computer.
Yeah, nothing to do with his computer. What was it again, Mel? He was sitting in the garden, wasn't he? I think when I did manage to finally get through to him.
Yeah, it's a real technical problem out in the garden.
Anyway, he will be with us, I'm sure, in due course. But good evening, everybody. And if you've got a question for the lads, please get it in. Trevor Arkle, I'll give you the first go. To be honest, you got in nice and early. Good evening, gents. 2 weeks until kickoff. 4 weeks to the window closes permanently. Let's have the cards on the table. We've not moved since last summer. Either in or out now, and I'm concerned. I mean, ultimately, Mal, we've made some ins, and we have got rid of a couple of players, but I get Trevor's sentiment. There is an air of frustration that is hovering over St James's Park once again. The realists out there are starting to panic and start to worry. The optimists are saying, keep the faith and, trust the process. I guess the truth of the matter at the moment at St James's Park is somewhere in the middle. But, are you getting concerned, Mal?
Yes, I think I am. It's almost giving me the impression of what happened at Manchester United in the very early days of Sir Alex Ferguson, where he started to get rid of all the older players, and he had a great bunch of kids, and they decided to bring them on. And we seem to be getting in all sorts of youngsters at the moment, and I just get that Alex Ferguson feel about the whole situation. That this young lad that they've got from Blackburn Rovers, he's had very limited experience, albeit he's only 16, but he has had some first team experience with Blackburn. But but is he anywhere near first team football in the Premiership? And you've got to say, no, I don't think so. Not at all. And there's been a whole host of other youngsters coming into the club, but it's all youngsters, and I am somewhat concerned. And we seem to get no news on, for example, the long-term injuries. So yeah, you know what? Since Amanda Staveley and her husband have left, we seem to be getting much less information coming out the club. Do you feel the same, Steve? Or
I do, mate. Yeah, I mean, I know it's only been a couple of weeks, but yeah, do football fans, you know, need to be kept up to date on transfer ins and outs? I would say potentially not. I think what could be handy is if somebody did come out and said, you know, this speculation on this player or this player is wide of the mark. It's Eddie Howe's job, and we're not seeing enough of Eddie Howe because, you know, he's busy trying to get the team match fit, ready for the first game of the season. So it's always a tough one. The only criticism I'll give the club on communication is, you know, from my point of view, we've lost the face of Newcastle United since the takeover. We've lost Amanda. We've lost me and Dad. We've got to get over it. They're gone. It's finished. It's done. They're in the history books with everybody else who was involved at the club at the top. We've now got Darren Eales. You know, I had my say about Darren when the cup final fiasco happened, and I felt that he didn't come out. I felt since his appointment, he's been there for the good news. He hasn't been there for the bad. I was saying to you off air, for instance, it was funny when he made the quip about, have you ever seen a Mackem in Milan? But should a chief executive be saying that? There's two sides to every story, you know. It's okay if I say that. I'm a fan. I'm somebody who can have a laugh, and you all have a laugh with us. But, you know, ultimately, is that something you really want your chief executive saying when you're playing in the biggest tournament in the world? I don't know. But I accept he's in that position and he's got to do what he does. Is he going to be the new face of Newcastle United communication-wise? I don't know. If he is, let's hope he comes with some good news and some bad news. Let's keep the lines of communication going. One thing I will say as well, it's a hell of a lot better than it was under Mike Ashley. We got no communication at all. You know, where do you draw the line with?
And no players either.
No. I've seen the flip side of both of this on social media with this transfer window. Some people are saying, we haven't signed anybody. Well, we have signed players. We haven't signed, you know, we haven't let anybody go. We haven't got rid of any rubbish. Well, we have. But we've also retained some players who maybe will go before the end of the window. The window ends at the end of this month. We've got another 4 weeks of the transfer window, and there's not a great deal happening in the window, full stop, Mal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much. Well, there's not a lot happening with any club at the moment, and there never is. It'll be a different thing. As once the real football starts, the Premier League, then it's when you see the first team that you put out. If you start to see holes and weaknesses, then you look maybe to quickly bring someone in, and a lot of the scouting is to cover all positions in possibilities, and so let's see how the first 2-3 games go, and then we might see two or three players coming in. But one thing that does sort of sit at the back of my mind, and it's the fact that Newcastle got so close to being severely punished for having overspent. And I think that they're very, very conscious at the moment not to get anywhere near a position like that. Hello, John.
How are you, my friend? Late run into the box from Gibbo. I almost got tripped over.
Good to see you, John. Slight internet issues
Yes,
as well,
Gibbo.
but yeah, you're slightly behind us, John. You're about 5 or 6 seconds behind. It's not a great signal, but we can hear you. So welcome to the show. We're just talking about the transfer window. Lack of transfers is what we're talking about. Trevor Arkle had basically said, "Are we getting worried, John? Are you getting worried?"
Well, I am, purely and simply because under no circumstances do I want us to go into the new season, or certainly the new month, next month, with no signings. Because if we're going to be a top 4 club and we've got to aim for the top 4 and we've got to aim for the 2 domestic trophies, then we need strengthening. There's no question about that. And yes, Newcastle would say, well, we haven't got to August the 17th yet. We haven't got to the end of the window yet. But we're cutting it fine. We've known this window started when it was going to start, and we haven't been in a position to push through any deals. And that worries me, because we need to. And by the day, we're getting less and less time to do it. And if we're going to move anybody out, we've got somebody to come in. So, we are getting it an tighter window all the way. And I do think that we need people. Yeah, we've got a good team as it stands, don't get me wrong, but we haven't got a European team as it stands.
Yeah, it's interesting. Lots of comments coming in on this, and this one was a good one from Sean. He said, "I think I'm the only Newcastle fan that thinks that we will have a stronger squad this year without the injuries and less games to play. I think Willock, Tonali, Livramento, Barnes, Hall, Gordon will all have big seasons. I think the only thing that slightly concerns me is up front with Wilson being out." And Newcastle, Malcolm, are moving in the last couple of hours. It's been confirmed that we are moving to try and sort that situation out with the strikers. And Newcastle are in advanced talks with Sheffield United to sign striker, come winger, William Osula. Some people are happy about this. Other people aren't. Benny says, happy with Osula as a third choice striker. Young, has good raw physical attributes. For those worried about his goal record, how many goals did Isak and Gordon get the season before we signed them? So there are people whinging and complaining about this signing. I mean, he's going to cost us probably in the region of £15 million. Mal hasn't scored a great lead of goals, but I think ultimately, from our perspective, he's a young player, and how can develop him? And he's not going to get into the team straight away if we've still got Wilson and Isaac there and they're both fit.
Yeah. All the business that's being done, here we are, third choice striker. It all seems to be youngsters that are coming in, and I'm just getting a feel that there's perhaps something going on where is Eddie Howe secure in the situation that we've got at the moment, with Amanda and her husband having left? I'm not so sure. That I got a little somewhat concerned when I saw that a bookie has actually got Eddie Howe as the favourite to be the first sacked this season. John, what have you heard on any of this?
Sacked? He might leave he might have left for the Football Association of his own free will, etc. But being sacked, I cannot see that in a month.
No, but the bookies have got him at 4-1 favourite.
Yeah, well, yeah, but they knee jerk to bets, don't they? And all of a sudden, people start thinking, "Oh, the FA want him. He'll be unhappy, etc., etc. He'll be on his toes. I'll have £100 on him." And I'm not worried about that. As far as the striker's concerned, the guy we were talking about from Sheffield United, he is the sort of guy I was expecting them to bring in. I've said many a time on this podcast and in print that Newcastle United, as long as they've got Wilson here as well, will go for a young striker. They've got to go for either a very young one or a very old one, because they're only going to spend up to 20 million, 25 million on a striker, because he's not going to be first team automatic. He's going to be backup, because he likes to only play one striker. And so they only wanted to pay. So what they did, they went for Calvert-Lewin, who was one end of the scale, an older guy with an injury record, so you can get him cheaper. They couldn't get him as cheap as they wanted to get him, so they forgot about that, and they've gone to the other end of the scale, the young guy, as they did, if you remember, guys, 2 seasons ago, with the guy that eventually went to Paris Saint-Germain, when they were looking for a young striker then. Remember, we were persistently looking for him. They're doing this here. And what this tells me is 2 things. First of all, it makes sense to them because they can get him within their price range and still have money for a centre-half and the outside right. And secondly, they know they cannot sell Wilson in this window because he's just undergone surgery. He's not going to be fit for Yonks.
Yes, absolutely.
So they can't sell him. They can't sell him before the window closes. So he's going to stay short, long term as the second choice striker, and this kid's going to be the third choice. But he'll be elevated to second choice regularly because Wilson won't be fit regularly. Now that means you're going to run down Wilson's contract and let him go for free in a year's time at the end of the coming season. So price-wise, this kid fits in with what Newcastle want to do. To get a proper striker, a ready-made one, 60 million is the least you can spend, which is
you're nearer 100 million, aren't you?
They're not going to do that for a cover centre forward. They're not going to do that because if they're going to spend big on one position, it'll be outside right. So they'll buy a kid that'll cover the front, and they believe has the potential to develop under the guidance of Howe and become a good player. Now, I haven't seen enough of this kid to have a thought one way or another, but his identical picture and his price range that he comes in fits in completely with the way I'm told Newcastle are running the window at the moment. The trouble is that, yes, we want that. We desperately want that because it is cover. We want someone because it is cover for Isaac when Wilson's not ready. But we also need to get a centre half and an outside right, don't we? And so we've got to press on. We've got to press on.
Yeah, there's talk of the centre half at Milan, isn't there?
Yes, there's been talk for quite a while of him, and they're certainly shown interest.
But I think that pulls apart money-wise.
Yeah, they're trying to balance the books. If we spend that on a centre half, what have we got left for an outside right?
Yeah,
and Vicky Verky. But the whole trouble is, Malcolm, I don't want us to keep thinking that, and then suddenly we'll find it's August the 29th, like, and we're into a situation like we're in at the end of June, where you're doing something quick or you've missed the boat.
Yeah. Do you think, John, that the situation that developed at the end of June and the panic measures that had to be taken, do you think it's given people the collywobbles and they're very nervous about doing anything at the moment?
It's given me the collywobbles, I can just tell you, because there was actually talk. Amanda came out with a terrific interview after she'd gone, and I thought it was heartfelt and it was beautiful, and it just made me love her that much more for what she's done for us. But she admitted that before she left, the great concern she had was that we might have to sell Gordon or Isaac. Now, we've always wanted to hold on to Isaac because 25 goal centre forwards you cannot find growing on twins. But it was the first recognition from someone within the club that Gordon was touted to Liverpool to go. And he was. There's absolutely no question of that, because they didn't think there was anyone else that could get out. Because at that stage, Anderson and Minter weren't in the frame. Minter was refusing to go to certain clubs, and Anderson they were going to keep, and nobody was asking for him. And then all of a sudden, they got out of jail. But the cat was let out the bag because the Liverpool thing come out, because they had made the move and said, what about Anthony Gordon? That that has worried me to death, because we've got to put a lid on that. We have got to come out. I know Eddie says,
John, why does it keep resurfacing, this thing about Liverpool and Gordon?
well, that's what annoys me and irritates me, and I've done my column tomorrow on this. I mean, there's two reasons. One is us hacks, because we're guilty, and the hacks on Liverpool with now to write about will keep saying we're going to go for Gordon, because they know there was something in that, and they know that he's a Liverpool-born lad, and they know he was a fan as a kid, so you can keep it going. But there is something in it. But Liverpool are trying to be clever. They're trying to sort of keep them on the back burner and see if they can get other people, and if they can't, may well
Creates a little bit of mental upset for him.
Yeah. So, but to me, I mean, Eddie has said, I don't want him to go. But I love Eddie to death. But he always says that. He didn't want Maxi to go. He didn't want Matt Ritchie and Paul Dummett to go. He doesn't want Trippier, Wilson, or Miggy Almiron to go. I mean, your left leg's got to fall off before you transfer you. So that doesn't reassure me in any way. But I want Darren Eales to come out and say, enough's enough of this business with Gordon. We are in charge of this because he's under contract to us. And I'm going to tell you something now, Liverpool, we ain't going to sell him to you. So you're whistling against the wind, forget it. And I would like even more Anthony Gordon to say that. But I want it put to bed because I'm sick of it. Can you imagine, guys, if the first piece of concrete transfer news that come out of Newcastle right now, today, was to announce it sold Anthony Gordon to Liverpool? Do you think Hope would go in the same taxi with him to Merseyside? Because it would tremendously, and we wouldn't have time to buy replacements. I don't mean a replacement for him, because people would say Harvey Barnes is that, and that's another reason why I worry, because I don't want them to think I'm all right with Livramento being a cover and taking over from Trippier, but I don't want Barnes to take over from Gordon. And that's nothing to do with Barnes. It's everything to do with Gordon. But we wouldn't have time to get other good players in. You talk about a step forward and a step back, Steve. If we sold Gordon this window to Liverpool, we would be doing one of Michael Jackson's moonwalks. Would be walking backwards so quick, would disappear into the long distance. Right? You can't sell your blue chip players. They're untouchable. And that's people like Bruno and Joe Linton and Gordon and Isaac. If you sell them, you can't stand up on the stairs and say, but by the way, we are a very ambitious club, because you're not. So I'm not suggesting for 1 minute we will sell Gordon. I think we won't. But I would want all this tittle-tattle put to bed, because I'm fed up of it. And Newcastle fans must be fed up of it as well.
Before you came on, we were just talking about like the face of Newcastle United. I mean, John, the point I was trying to make was that, at the moment, we've got Eddie Howe and Darren Eales who talk to the press. Darren will put out stuff, but we've had some great PR like in the pre-season from everybody. We've heard from Paul Mitchell, we've heard from Darren Eales, we've heard from Peter Silverstone, we've heard from Eddie Howe on numerous occasions. I mean, I said to Malcolm, we get more communication than we ever had under Ashley. We probably get more communication now than we've ever had, but it seems that there's quite a few people still not happy because, and you've just said it there, tittle tattle. There's lots of tittle tattle. We can't stop it, John, can we? We can't stop tittle tattle.
No, no, you absolutely can't. And in these days, more so than when Malcolm was playing and I was following the club every day, because social media, it produces the tittle tattle.
Yes.
And there wasn't a social media then. And social media goes into overdrive. And by the way, social media completely ignores facts. Facts getting away with a good story. Things will be made up. The Chinese whispers. You start off at one end, and by the time it gets to another end, it's a completely different story. And that is what happened. And that is like pouring petrol on a bonfire. Yeah. And so we get the tittle tattle. We cannot stop it. But I think from time to time, Steve, I would like Newcastle to come out, this persistence and the uncertainty with Gordon. And while we're going through this window where we're not signing anybody, the fear of losing somebody big becomes even greater. So I would like somebody at Newcastle outside of Eddie, and it would have to be Darren Eales, because the chairman could put out a statement, but he doesn't talk as such, to come out and say, excuse me, this man is not going, and the reason I can say that is we've got his contract, and we are therefore in charge, and we're not going to sell. And if they come out and said that, then that would put the whole thing to bed, because it would mean even if Anthony was agitating, he couldn't go. And I'm not suggesting for 1 second that he is agitating. He's been very, very happy, but he's bound to get a little bit interested when it's his boy. I mean, when you were a boy, you know, and Fulham come in for you, Malcolm, you're interested because it's the club you love it as a kid. And this is exactly the same here. That is understandable. He had a love for Liverpool as a young kid, the same as I've got a love for Newcastle, and Steve's got a love for Newcastle, and you got a love for Newcastle eventually when you come and play for us, Malcolm.
Yeah,
it's natural. But I'm just sick to death of it now, because, and I think half of it's the Hack's fault, Liverpool end of the stick. The Liverpool journals are keeping it going, but there's no, you know, there's no smoke without fire. So it's there, and we need that put to bed. I think that needs putting to bed now, because you know, the lack of big name players make
John, and I totally agree with you on that. And there was a text that showed, and it had the answer: give Gordon a new contract, give him a new contract with numerous more years, and that answers the whole thing.
That's very true, but they would have to make a statement before that, because a new contract,
and his contract runs out in 2 years anyway. So
it takes time.
The age that he is, what harm in giving him a new 5-year contract starting from now?
And that's absolutely true, Malcolm. But at the same time, let's put Isak on a new contract and all.
Isak as well, of course, yeah, because they're the diamonds in the side.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. But I mean, I only made that point, Steve, that, you know, we're dealing in theory. Let's make the point and then bin it quickly, because we don't want to dwell on it. The thought's horrendous. But if the news tomorrow morning, the first piece of transfer news, significant transfer news in this window tomorrow morning, was to say we'd agreed terms with Liverpool for Gordon, that would knock Wayne's in, wouldn't it? Completely.
Yeah, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Completely.
And I think
let's kill that. Let's kill that.
I think that's what I was saying. I was saying to Mal before, like, you know, the pessimists are predicting something like that, John. The optimists, of course, are saying, you know, keep the faith, stay with it, trust the process. Newcastle will bring in a big gun. You know, from our perspective, I think Malcolm's nailed it though, as did the person in the comments. You know, Gordon's contract expires in 2026, as Benny says. That's the worry. Will he sign a new one if Liverpool are in his ear? Well, if he doesn't want to sign a new one, we know what to do. We've got to sell him.
Yeah. Then you know exactly how he feels.
What have you made of Eddie Howe, John? Alan Thompson says the next press conference with Eddie should stop all the speculation and say Gordon is going nowhere, just like Jurgen Klopp said he was not going to be England manager. Simple. I wish it was as simple as that. I've watched Eddie Howe come out in his first couple of pressers, if you like, since the pre-season training started, and I'm seeing a slightly different Eddie Howe, John. Am I making that up in my own mind, or are you seeing a slightly different Eddie Howe? He doesn't seem the happy chappy that he was, you know, at the back end of last season.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a slightly different Eddie Howe. I think it's part of the process of becoming a top manager, that you've got to roll with the punches, that the sea is not always going to be a mill pond. There's sometimes going to be a little bit of a tidal wave coming in. And the bottom line is that, you know, when he said those dramatic things he said out in Germany, they quickly had a peace meeting, if you like, and he was reassured by what he was told. But we, all three of us, know, and so do the Newcastle United fans, that the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Eddie's waiting. He was reassured that he'll have a say in the signings, and he'll have a say in who goes, and he'll play a significant part in the club. And that's terrific. And that's the way it should be. And I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that it's any other way but that. But he will only feel happy again when we've got 2 good signings in, that he's 100% behind, and we haven't sold Gordon, etc., etc.
Yeah.
The proof is in the pudding. The proof is, and he will not be the guy doing double somersaults and flips and get a cigar out and order a bottle of wine until it's like that. And we're all a bit like that, aren't we? We're all waiting. I mean, I've got the old bottle of wine still on the side there, but the cork's completely in the top. I'll open it when we sign a couple of good players. I mean, we're all waiting just for that little lift. I mean, you would think, wouldn't you, that we were a side that might be facing relegation. There's that much, not that much despondency around, but apprehension. But the thing is, we've waited so long for it to go forward. And since the takeover, we've only gone one way, and that's upwards all the way, including last season, because we know what went wrong there. And we're still in the starting blocks for that to be the same again. But because of the little things that all add up to a big thing, like Amanda going, like June the 30th being chaos, like a new directive, sporting, and no new signings. There's been one little negative, then another little negative, and then another little negative, all just small. But when they add together and there isn't a huge positive in the middle of it, you worry. It's called
you start to scratch your head, don't you?
It's called being a fan. You worry because it's your club and you want them to be successful.
Sure.
And you believe that unless something happens, there won't be. When I say successful, I mean, if that's a top 4 or winning a domestic trophy, if that's what success is, and it is, then you know you could fall just short of that, just for the want of a little bit of stardust sprinkled on the top.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Lots of comments coming in. Yvonne, I'm glad you got your season ticket sorted. Thanks for your message. Yeah, the club did send emails out, which was great. I mean, for me, this is beyond belief. This is something slightly outside of Newcastle, although there is a Newcastle connection, Mal. Steve McLaren is back in football. Left Manchester United. He's now taken the Jamaican job. As Mark Bayer says, the Jamaicans are fond of jerks, though. Maybe that's why they've taken him on board. But the short list included Steve McLaren and also included Steve Bruce, Mal.
Yeah, I know. But Steve McLaren's an excellent coach. I got to know him quite well when he was at Middlesbrough, and players talk really highly of him. I think it was he just was not suited to the England job. Great as a coach, but not in the senior role. And it did for him that photograph, didn't it? And the headline, the Wally with the brolly. It just absolutely did for him. And so, but you look at you look at the jobs that he's had since, though. You know, all in coaching, and he is very, very much appreciated in the game. Very much appreciated.
The worry, by the way, as far as I'm concerned, Jamaica, giving the job to McLaren and having Steve Bruce in the runners-up thing, have got a death wish. Like, I mean, if ever there's a death wish, you should just come to Tyne's side and say, "What do you think of it?" And they would never go anywhere near it. And by the way, McLaren had a manager's job after England. He managed us and did it very badly. And did it very badly. He didn't last the full season.
No, he didn't. But John,
he didn't have a Wally here, but he was still a Wally.
But he came at a really bad time, didn't he? And
bad time for us.
But no, it was a bad time for any manager. Whoever took the job was going to find it a dreadful uphill slog.
But you're right, Malcolm. He's not a manager. He's a coach. He's not a
coach.
manager.
Yes. Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, I do like that. He says, I wonder if you put on a Jamaican accent like he did with a Dutch accent.
he did, remember that?
Oh, that was unbelievable, wasn't it? When he started talking English with a Dutch accent.
Okay, we're halfway through the show. Time for the ads. A big thanks to all our sponsors. Skips and Bins. You can find their website at skipsandbins.com. Contact us, www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. Their website, mrvickies.co.uk. Email info@mrvickies.co.uk. Telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to United Group Travel. They are the Travel and Tourism Award winners in 2024. Their website, www.unitedgrouptravel.com. Email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com or telephone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. Just £30 per person deposit. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. A big thanks to Media Arts. You can find them at www.media-arts.co.uk. And don't forget, we are a podcast. You can find us on iTunes or Spotify or other podcast providers. If you want to help the channel grow, then hit the like button, the little thumb underneath the video, click share and share to your social media, or join the channel for as little as $1.99 a month. If you want to take out a one-off payment membership, go to nufcmatters.com and hit membership. And for a £25 fee, you get a scarf, a cup, a pen, and a membership card. You can also put a smartphone over the top of this QR code. It'll take you straight there. And don't forget, we also help the food bank on this channel. nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk is a website where you can make a virtual donation today. Okay, welcome back to the Supermac and Gibbo show. Darren says, Steve, when the press are talking already, why don't they ask him outright if England called, do you want the job? I think he's more or less answered the question in as many ways that he can. And I guess we're just going to have to, put up with this, John, aren't we? He has more or less said, I'm happy where I am.
I think that he would only take the England job if Newcastle did the dirty on him. And I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't. I think he's going to stay, but we want him to stay totally happy and not 90% happy. But I tell you what, he's the important guy in the equation because he's a Newcastle manager. But I'd like all to be happy. And the best way to make one happy is get somebody through the door. Now, is it, the other worry, guys, and I've mentioned this before, when you get somebody through the door, they've got to hit the ground running. We've got 3 players who are about to enter their second year at Newcastle United, and they still haven't justified the financial outlay for them. That's Tonali at 55 million, it's Harvey Barnes at 30-odd million, and it's Hall at 28 million. I know we've just got Hall now, but he's been on loan for a year and we agreed to 28 million when he came here on loan. So there's 119 million being spent, and they've still got to justify those figures. So let's hope that that's going to happen this year. And I've got every reason to think it will, because Tonali's back, and I think he's back with it, and he'll have an even better attitude because of his gratitude for not only the way the clubs looked after him, but the way the fans have stayed in love with him. So I think we'll get something out of him. Hall's looking better and better after a very slow start, so that's good. And Barnes has always had the potential; he just hasn't had the fitness. So
what do you make of where he's been played, John? You mentioned Hall, and I was going to mention that tonight. He's been playing him in that holding role in midfield, which quite clearly he's probably not going to have the opportunity to do that once Tonali's back in. I think it explains why we're quite happy to let Anderson go. I mean, Anderson's already injured at Forest, got injured in his first friendly. Wouldn't wish that on the kid. He's a great guy, but Newcastle made a decision, and Hall prefers to play midfield, but maybe he's just going to sit and wait for his chance when maybe there's an injury comes in, and that'll be the role he fits. Do you think he's better in there than he is at fullback?
At this moment, I'm not certain he is. I think he can play that, and he's proved that. But you know what, guys? I keep getting told Hall looks a good player in this position, and Murphy's the best player in the side, and he scored 4 goals. We've played a 3rd division side in Germany. We've played Hull, and we've played a Japanese side. I mean, this isn't the Premier League. This isn't Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool, Spurs. I mean, with the utmost respect, and I adore it all, I don't put too much credence. I mean, when Murphy scores 4 goals in his first 3 Premier League games, I'll be starting to gurgle a little bit. But until then, I'm thinking, I mean, Hall can play in that position. Midfield, he can play attacking midfield. They've tried him defensively because he can sit and spray the ball about. It'll be a little bit difference between spraying the ball about in Japan or at Hull than spraying the ball about in the Premier League. And if he's going to get into the side to start with, he's going to get in at left back. And if he doesn't get in at left back, that's because Kelly's playing there and fitness prevailing, and Burns left-sided centre half. But left back remains his best option, I think, at this given moment.
What's your thoughts on Lewis Hall, Mal? Where would you like to see him play? And do you think he's more or less going to be kept as a kept as backup, if you like, with the midfield being so strong?
Yeah, he hasn't impressed me enough to say that he warrants a regular first team spot. I think he's still got to fight for his position. That Livramento is head and shoulders beyond him, and so of course there's Trippier as well. And in all honesty, I think I would rather see Trippier at left back, Livramento at right back, and play it that way, and rather than it be Hall on the left, and then the other two having to scrap for the right back spot. So, and in all honesty, I thought Trippier, I thought he did really well for England, and I thought it was. I thought it was very unfortunate in the way that that things sort of worked out when he was asked to play left back. I think he did terrific there. On the other side, there was a right back who was having a nightmare of a competition, and Trippier should have been playing there in the first place, in place of Walker. So. Yeah, Hall just it leaves me pondering. I'm not sure he's got the pace that's required. I'm not sure that he's got a confidence about him that's required to play at that level. And if you watch him and then you start watching Livramento, you see Livramento is a completely different type of spirit, and it's the kind of spirit that is going to succeed. And I haven't got that confidence with Hall. He's got to earn that confidence in me, and it's going to take him a hell of a job.
Yeah, lots of comments coming in. Mark Bayer still on about Steve McLaren. He says, one for you to sing, Steve. How does Steve McLaren like his donuts? We're jamming. Very good. Very good. Yeah, it is. Yeah. I mean, we've played some friendlies. John, you made the point that we've played lowercase. We've played Hull City. We've played Ursula Diamonds or whatever they're called in Japan. I think the one thing that stood out for me, you mentioned Hall, of course, but is Alexander Isak. It doesn't matter who he's playing, John. He can find the back of the net. We've got a real goal scorer there who I have to say, if we can keep him at the club for a few years, is going to be up there troubling the likes of Malcolm in the goal scoring, the goal scoring records.
He's a thoroughbred. There's absolutely no question of that. Since we first saw him and what he did, there's players that are power packed. There's players that are clumsy but just know where the finish is, like say McQuinn. And there's players that look like a derby winner. And this guy looks like a derby winner. He does. I know everybody's banged on, but he does look like Thierry Henry at Arsenal. He does look like Henry. He plays like him. He's got the elegance, the gait, the natural ability. He is top quality. And, you just said there, Steve, the answer is, if we can keep him here, he'll score a load of goals, etc., etc. You know the way to keep him here, Steve? Buy other good players and make progress. If you buy other good players and make progress, he'll stay here. If he thinks we're stagnating, he'll go to a Champions League side. Let us be the Champions League side, and then he can stay here. Let us be the Champions League side. And the best way to keep your best players, and I'm certain as an ex-player, Malcolm, you would agree with this, the best way to keep your best players is to buy some more great players.
Yeah.
Because then they'll stay. If you don't, if he's carrying the flag on his own for us, you cannot expect him. A Swedish boy come to Newcastle, you can't expect him to stay here 6 seasons if he's carrying the flag on his own. He will stay here as long as we are making significant progress. And the way to make significant progress, let us not get to September the 1st without any meaningful signings. Bear that in mind. If they want to keep Gordon and they want to keep Isaac and they want to keep Bruno and they want to keep Joe Linton, they've got to buy some more.
Yeah. And what about Isaac? Well, yeah, they do. Yeah. What about Isaac Mal? He's got off to a great start in pre-season, and I mean, he looks like he's firing on all cylinders as well.
Yes. I think he's just one of those exceptional players who you could put him out at any side, any level, and he would just keep sticking the ball over the line. And he's the kind of player. He's actually a joy to play with. With midfield players, they lift their head, and he's always showing himself, and an absolute joy. What he needs is all forwards. They always need a supply coming into the box, and the supply will come in on a regular basis. Gordon playing on the left hand side. It's what happens on the right hand side. You've got to have it evenly balanced. You can't have it all lopsided, where everything's coming from the left. And also good to see that Tonali will be back as well. And I think that that's going to make us a much stronger midfield. Bruno and Joe Linton, along with Tonali, good heavens above. That's going to be quite a powerhouse of a midfield, I think. And of course, it's usually when you've got everything like that, a sort of horseshoe around the centre forward, it's great for the centre forward. It really is. And when everybody's in that powerhouse mood and mode, then stuff just keeps coming the way of the centre forward. Yeah, absolutely lovely.
John Mitchelson's back, the little tinker, John. He says, another tease up at Gibbo. What happened in the 65-66 season?
What's that supposed to mean?
I don't know. He says, and he was the first one to be named. Another feat he later did. P.S. I think you will get this one.
Well, that's a fascinating question, because that season I was, I was in London in Fleet Street, and I came back at the end of that season, to cover Newcastle United in the first job.
Right, you were writing for the Sun, John, weren't you?
Yeah, I was. Yes, I was.
Mm.
Yes, I was down there, and then I came back at the end of that season because I was offered the job by the Chronicle, and I couldn't get back quick enough because it was my club. And I come back, covered the World Cup, and we won it, and then we went on and won the first cup. So I didn't actually cover that season. So, but it's still in my little notebook, Stephen. When I go and get my little notebook, don't you worry about that. But no, because I wasn't covering it week by week. I was in the smoke. I'm not certain what the gentleman's on about, but I'm off intrigued.
There we go. Well, if you ask the question again, but put a bit more meat on the bones, that would be good. Mark Todd says, "What does John think of today's current journalism regarding Newcastle?" He says, "For me, they seem more content with trying to interpret what Eddie hasn't said rather than what he has said."
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I'm not disloyal. I'm not going to sit here as the elder statesman and have a pop at my young journalists because they're trying to make their way in the same way as I did, and there's some quite exceptional people around. And I'm not just talking about the Chronicle. I'm talking about people like Craig Hope and Luke Edwards and George Colkin, and there's some excellent people around. As a sweeping generalization, not talking about individuals, I don't like the way it is worked these days because there's no individual one-on-one sit-downs with the manager, etc., etc. You all heard it in on a press conference. There's 30 of you. 28 of you don't ask a question, just write down the answers, and you've all got the same story. And also, if you have a question and you don't like the manager's answer, you can't nail them on it and say, "Sorry, mate," like I used to do with Joe Harvey and everybody else. "Sorry, mate, I don't accept that. What about?" And come back at them. You ask a question, you get the answer, you've got to move on. So I think it's a difficult way of handling things now. I think clubs have been clever. They've tried to snuff out the naughty questions from journalists and make life a lot more pleasant for their manager and their coaching staff, etc., etc. I would hate to operate under those circumstances, and I would still ask the naughty question and probably get thrown out on me as a consequence.
Good point. Off on a tangent, says C. Anderson. But does anyone know what happened to Man City's FFP case? Not the 115 charge case, the one where they took action against the Premier League. John, again, that's your question, really. I guess, has there been anything about that?
No, there hasn't. I mean, I think that was very much as a reaction to the charges they face. And I think if they're found guilty on the charges they face, they will sweep into action on that side of it. And you can't imagine that they will be found 115 times not guilty, do you? It's a lot of charges to be found not guilty every time. But did you see the other one, guys? Just in the last 48 hours or whatever. I mean, are Manchester City repeatedly flouting the rules, or authority out to nail Manchester City? Because they've just got fined a couple of million quid or whatever it is.
Yeah, it was 2 million quid, John.
For too many late kickoffs. Did you see that?
Yes. Yeah. Well, yes, but it seemed that they were doing it in key games, John. You know,
sure.
Towards the end of the season, so that they could find that they would get to know the result of or how the other game was standing, and give them time to maybe change the game.
Do they think they've invented the wheel? Because Jimmy Hill did that at Coventry years ago.
Yes, he did.
And he took up Sunderland in doing it, which, I wasn't too chuffed about. But start the game 2 minutes, 3 minutes late.
Yeah.
And of course, 3 minutes on. So you know the other results for the sides that are going to be relegated. And you can play out a draw by telling the opposition, "Hey, we're not going to bother ourselves, don't bother yourselves," etc., etc. It's not new, but I found it interesting and it put a smile on my face. I mean, the Premier League, after after Man City, or Man City after the Premier League, or they both at it. And just to suddenly find that they breached the late start rules X number of times 2 seasons ago, and more times last season, made me smile a little bit. I mean, Ferguson made a career out of Fergie time, didn't he?
Oh, didn't he just? Yeah. And he was never fined.
No.
Mark says he appreciates your honesty, John. You're miles above for me, a true professional. Reporters are surely there to answer uncomfortable questions. Thank God a few still have the integrity to do so.
Thank you, Mark. It sounds like a lovely man to me, but that's just my opinion.
Trip to Japan. Finish off on this. Really, we've talked about it in fits and starts and about players, etc. And we've talked a little bit about Eddie Howe. I mean, 13,000 were there, Mal, yesterday. The ground holds 66,000. We've still got a long way to go, haven't we? I think Newcastle to be as a bigger buy, and I guess that's what these trips are about. I mean, if you have a Man City or a Manchester United traveling to these places, they do tend to fill the stadiums. We're very much in our infancy of trying to become one of those top echelon teams, I guess.
Sure. I think it also depends on where you travel to. If Newcastle went, say, to South Africa or to other English-speaking nations, they will always find a huge crowd of Geordies who will fill a stadium. I witnessed it over in South Africa and other places, but Japan is not English speaking, and so Geordies aren't going to go there, are they?
But I mean, I think Steve, you were making the point, and I understand the point. I think you're correct, but you've got to walk before you can run. And we can't expect, we suddenly get Saudi owners, so we've got a few quid, so now everybody in the world's going to want to see us. They'll want to see us when we are doing what Manchester City are doing and Arsenal are threatening to do with their history, etc., etc. You've got to remember, I've said we've got to walk before we run. We had our legs chopped off under Ashley. Never mind walking.
Well, that's right. Yes, and of course you mentioned Manchester United. What one should never forget is that Man United had an absolute head start back in 1958, an absolute head start on everybody with the Munich air crash, and the game sort of it couldn't help out a club enough in the way that everybody just gathered around. They lent them players. They would do everything to keep Man United going. And of course, it became a worldwide sensation, this. And Man United have benefited from a disaster for all these decades since. And they still do. They still do. It made them a worldwide club.
It takes time to get there. You don't get there by suddenly having rich owners. You've got to then get successful.
Sure. And Man City don't. With all their success of late, they're not. They could never pull in the kind of crowds around the world that Manchester United do.
We couldn't do it against Liverpool or Manchester. I tell you what, you can't do it against Celtic. I was the night before, I was with Roy Aitken doing a deal in Newcastle, and Roy was skipper of Newcastle back in the 90s when we went to the playoffs and lost to Sunderland, and he is now an ambassador for Celtic, who he made about 667 games for them, won absolutely everything. He's just come back from America because they've been on a trip to America, and he was an ambassador. They went over there, and they have fans all over the world following the Lisbon Lions and the sort of the jocks all over the world. Now, you don't become that the following day after a takeover. You earn the right to become that. and we will earn the right to become that. But it's going to take time. I mean, we've lived in the dark ages. Can we not lose sight of the fact that a couple of years ago, Mike Ashley was ruining my Sunday lunch, and had done for about a decade and a half. So we emerged from that into the sunlight. But you've got to be in the sunlight a little while before you get sunburnt, you know.
Good points, well made, as always on this show. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Thanks to the moderators as well for keeping the chat good. We are back tomorrow night for the Three Amigos at 5 o'clock. And John, I'll see you with Rob Lee. Looking forward to catching up with you. We will be back next week, me, Supermac and Gibbo next Thursday. Look forward to seeing you then, guys. Take care.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye, everyone.